Good evening. We'll reconvene this meeting of the Job Growth, Energy Affordability Policy and Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, January 17th. So we have completed the public comment portion of the O'Neill bill, and now we'll go to member questions and comments. First on the list, we'll come back to Representative Mayquade. You get to go first. See the benefits of being punctual?
I'm always punctual, Chairman. Thank you. Let me find myself here. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative O'Neill, I just have a general question. So I'm looking at this bill, and it's deleting a lot of specific language about what the fund does, but I don't see anything inserting what it will do. And so I wanted to know what the fund will do and maybe why the language wasn't included in this bill.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for that question. And that was done very purposefully because that conversation is a much longer conversation. This bill needs to get through in a timely fashion because of the open period right now until February 28th when they're taking applications. And immediately after that, they'll be doing another lottery. And so we'll be funding a whole, not just 1 year, but a commitment for 10 years. And so this bill is putting, an end date to the Made in Minnesota Solar Program so that we don't fund not just 1 more year, but actually 10 more years into the future of that funding. So the reason that we're moving the fund from the RDF over to a fund within MMB, so the state funds, is because that was a recommendation of the legislative auditor, and that hadn't been done yet. Nothing about the fund changes. It simply is taking it from a private account, which is a little bit strange, and putting it under the state purview. So we're not changing anything about the fund. It stays the same as far as all that language. It's just shifting it to under better controls and more transparency.
Representative Mayquade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with the exception of the Made in Minnesota, then the fund would do exactly what it does now, just through the MMB and not through where it is currently.
Representative O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Mayquade. One distinction there, just to clear that up, is that in the past, there has been an outside board that would appropriate these funds. Once we bring it in-house, now the legislature needs to take action on it. It's like any other appropriation. So I appreciate you two reaching an agreement on that. The reality is that we do have to reach an agreement with the governor's, like nothing would happen unilaterally by the legislature, but the governor would have to sign the bill.
So each year or each
Representative Mayquade.
time, thank you, Mr. Chair, it would be appropriated from the legislature each time we appropriate the money.
I think that, Representative Mayquade, I think it'd be fair to say that it would be up to the legislature and the governor. Certainly, there'd be no requirement to do it annually, but I think you would probably see biennial budgeting is what I would expect. That would be something that the legislature and the governor would reach agreement on. So in other words, there doesn't have to be an annual bill. You can do 2-year budget planning and just do it in a budget setting year. Next we'll go to Representative Wagenius.
One of the things that I've heard as we are chatting here today is folks saying, do we have to do this as an abrupt end? And I'm talking about this Made in Minnesota Solar. Or is there a way to reform, improve with a road to a sunset that would allow us not to abruptly say goodbye to 11,000 jobs? So that's my basic question to you, but I think maybe we can all better understand it if Bill Grant could come back up and visit with us. And here's my question for him. We heard that the beginning of these very expensive incentives. We've also heard that things are changing, things are dropping, but I don't have a context for where we are now in the program without major change and where we're going. So we have this part. I don't think we have this part and this part. So if Bill Grant could give it
If Mr. Grant, certainly up to Mr. Grant if he wishes to testify. It looks like he is. Enthusiastically, I may add. Mr. Grant, welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to Representative Wagenius' question, I think there are a lot of things that are changing about the solar industry that will be reflected then in a future Made in Minnesota program. The most notable thing, of course, is the dramatic drop that we've seen in solar prices. And the way that the Made in Minnesota statute works is that incentive levels are based primarily on the cost of solar panels that are being utilized in the program. I think I mentioned that we've seen a 100% reduction in 3 years in the cost of solar, and that's reflected in the incentive amounts that are current and had been announced for the 2017 program. We have no reason to believe that that trend won't continue. In fact, all of the industry projections are that it will, and at the same rate or even faster. And so I would expect in another 2 years, another similar kind of drop in the incentive levels and a corresponding increase in the number of Minnesota businesses and homeowners that would benefit from the program. Since, of course, with a lower incentive level, we'd be able to offer incentives to that many more Minnesotans. And all of the effects that I mentioned earlier with job creation as a result would speed up and intensify as well. The other thing that I'll mention is that, of course, when the legislation was passed in 2013, we were asked at the department to stand up a program for the year 2014, which was a real challenge for us and precluded the possibility of establishing programmatic rules at the front end, as would be customary in standing up a new program like this. Since then, we have taken it upon ourselves to initiate that rulemaking process. We're at the point now where we're soon ready to promulgate new rules, and among other things, the new rules would provide greater transparency about how incentive levels are set by virtue of the somewhat complicated nature of the statute around that incentive level setting. It would clarify what consumer protections are in place in the event that equipment doesn't operate as expected, or we have installations that don't meet customers' expectations. So we have, for example, a warranty provision in the draft rule that we think would offer real protections for customers investing in new solar equipment. So the rulemaking, of course, is an important next step in the evolution of the program. Finally, I'd just say that, of course, as I think you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the program has a window of eligibility between January 1st and the end of February every year. So that open enrollment period is with us now. Several hundred Minnesotans have already submitted applications for incentives for the 2017 program year, and obviously one of the things we would have to do if you were to terminate the program abruptly would be to notify people that have submitted those applications in good faith that there won't be funding available for those incentives.
Representative Wagenius, any follow-up?
Not for him, but I think that does explain where we have been, where we are right now, and where we are going. It does not give us the kind of roadmap to the end, and I think folks were listening for or suggesting that. I think that's something we ought to talk about rather than just abrupt saying no. So that's one thing, and I appreciate Mr. Grant's testifying, but there was another thing I wanted to talk about to the author about, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, Representative Wagenius.
Okay. When you talked about the fund and getting rid of the Renewable Development Fund, it was a course correction. And for somebody who was around when that fund came into being. I don't see it as a course correction. I see it as breaking a bargain, and breaking a bargain between Excel, the tribes at Prairie Isle, the tribe at Prairie Island, and the legislature. And that was a hard, hard, hard bargain that came into being. But because it was such a hard bargain, and people remember that there's been kind of a moral, we're going to keep it kind of the way it was, at least to have renewable outcomes. And the money has been safe. But when I see you're putting this in as a energy fund, it becomes just general fund money without any moral imperative. It's just general fund money. And I know how general fund money, and probably you know how general fund money goes around here. Your caucus is going to be looking for money for roads and bridges, and I'm thinking, is this the new roads and bridges money? So I think this is not a course correction. This is breaking a long-standing bargain, and I know there are people that would like to get out of it, but we do make commitments around here. And particularly when it's a commitment to put casks right where people live, it's best that we stick by what we said we were going to do.
Before I go to you, Representative Neal, Representative Wagenius, can you explain how the money right now is not general fund money?
Actually,
Representative.
it is general fund money. It's not constitutionally protected. However, it has lasted this long and stayed for renewable because there was this bargain out there. Because it was, the promise was renewables. The promise was between three, the tribes, the government, actually the legislature, and Excel. So that was I don't know that you were here then. I know Representative Clark was, and could maybe speak more to that. But it's a different kind of commitment than just putting something in a general fund.
So was Excelsior Energy renewable?
Say that again?
Excelsior Energy, was that renewable?
I don't know.
Okay. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Wagenius. Well, I actually live in a community also with casks just right next door. So I have the Monticello nuclear power plant. And there's nothing in the legislation that says, okay, Xcel Energy, you no longer have to put the $350,000 per cask for Monticello and the $500,000 per cask for Prairie Island into this fund. We're literally following what the legislative auditor has said that we need to do to have better transparency and better accountability.
Representative Wagenius.
I'm all for transparency, accountability. You couldn't do enough of that for me, so that's fine. The question, the issue is here, we're moving it, first of all, you're taking away renewable, which was part of the bargain, and I think part of what kept the money intact. And now it's just general fund money. And we've been around here long enough to know general fund money in various pots gets raided when things are tough. And I would say the tough thing we're going to face this year is roads and bridges. And if we're not going to raise a tax, which, I accept that, but you have to find the money someplace. And we've been through this. We went through it with landfills. Borrow the money, don't quite pay it back. You're making it vulnerable to that very thing. So that's, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what your intention here is, or to pass this out or lay it over for possible inclusion.
The motion before the committee is to pass as amended, that the bill be recommended to pass as amended and referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
In that case, I think I will ask for a roll call.
Okay.
I mean, we are talking about how many jobs we're going to get rid of in Minnesota, and that troubles me.
Okay,
No
roll
end.
call's been requested, so we'll be taking a vote by roll call. Representative Metza, you were next on the list. We jumped ahead of you, so you're up.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize to the committee for running late. I did try to squeeze a prior obligation in with Representative Sundin. We just squeaked back in the nick of time. So I appreciate everyone's patience tonight. Representative O'Neill, thank you for being willing to work with me on this, and it saddens me to a certain degree as one of the authors in actually the same spot, number 2 on the bill, when Representative Moline carried this in 2013. And we made some appropriations with the RDF in terms of wanting to have an account that had a focus on Made in Minnesota solar. And we've heard wonderful testimony today. And I couldn't be prouder of the work that we were able to accomplish and the business that has been able to get a foothold here in the state. And I hope that folks are looking for ways to make it work. Unfortunately today, I've got to come before the committee and say the intent in which I worked on this bill needed work. And the rules and some of the things that the commissioner had discussed in his earlier testimony are a day late and a dollar short, so to speak. And elections have consequences. I'm not saying Chair Mahoney, which means that we're heading a different direction right now. And essentially what I don't want to die is the idea that we can invest in renewable energy, that we can move the ball forward and create good opportunities for people. And I'm proud of that work. But today, there also comes a time when you're forced with the stark reality of what you've got to do to move forward. And if we're in charge, Representative O'Neill, my bill might be a little bit different in reshaping this, but I respect the work that you're doing and hope that we can continue to work together as this moves through the process. And we'll be supporting this with my vote because the intent of the Made in Minnesota Solar, in my opinion, was not met to the fullest extent that it could have been. And so with that, you have my continued support as this moves forward, and I hope that, you know, some of the issues I think were very valid today that were discussed by folks. And as we're continuing to meet and as the bill goes through the process here, Mr. Chair, you know, I think we've gotten some great advice from people, and we have an opportunity to admit mistakes when we make them. And I could have done a little bit better of a job drafting it with Representative Moline when we dedicated those RDF funds, and in hopes that we can continue to do work in renewable energy, whether it be batteries or Tesla solar roofs, which I know just came out, which may be a cool new thing. Maybe I'll even get Chair Garofalo to come help me someday when I make enough money, install a solar roof, because I think it'd be pretty cool to have something that stopped the water from leaking in your house and was permanently fixed. And so with that, I'm supportive of this bill moving forward. I think we've got a little work to do and can listen as we're going along the way. But I appreciate being able to work with you on this and your openness to meeting, both Mr. Chair and Representative O'Neill. And we'll be voting yes on this today. We can move the ball forward and live to fight another day, and that's what politics are about. Elections have consequences on both sides of things, and to me, this is one of them. I'm literally, in the last 2 years, the A1 amendment, as an example, members, was something I slipped into the Transportation Committee. Former Representative Beard was not too happy with that. I remember sitting in committees with him. But you got to move on, and you got to make things work. And I think solar's working in Minnesota, and I want to let all the testifiers today know. I'm proud of the work that you did. I'm proud that we put a bill out here that enabled folks to have a chance. And that chance isn't gone. But right now, I think this majority is focusing on some other things. And I think in order to move the ball forward and you know, keep progress being made in this committee, that this bill should move out, get to Ways and Means, and We'll discuss the important issues that were brought up in the testimony and incorporate as many as we're able to and take it from there. So with that being said, again, I apologize for coming back a few minutes late here, and thank you for your continued efforts on this.
Representative Mahoney.
I will the same apologize for getting back a little late, but I know this shocks you, but my business community invited me to speak to them, and they all applauded too. I mean, it's amazing.
When you left?
When I was done.
Representative Mahoney, sorry.
I'm going to, I have some questions about the bill, some for the author and some for one of the co-authors. One of the frustrating pieces to the RDF for me is that it's a charge on the nuclear storage casks down at Prairie Island and Monticello. And it's charged to the Xcel Energy ratepayers. And little by little in my 20 years here, I've seen that creep and, get outside of the Xcel Energy ratepayers area. And the Made in Minnesota solar was a prime example. I think it's about 85% paid by Xcel and about 15% by everybody else. And quite a few of the testifiers came up today speaking of at a statewide importance on the expense of the metro area, which, we are, sometimes I feel like the golden goose, and I'm just wondering when the final chop to my neck will come. So, Representative O'Neill, what's your intent with this bill, and what it gets rid of all of this solar and repurposes the money? Where is that money going? Is that going back to the general fund? Is it going into energy products or services in the Xcel Energy area? Or is this, again, taking more money out of the metro area to feed all the other mouths in the state?
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Mahoney. Well, I'm an Xcel Energy customer as well, so I also pay into this.
You feel my pain.
Yes, sir, I do. So that we've been silent on that because it's really a big conversation. That's not something that I think we can do as quickly as this needs to get done, because we do have the February 28th deadline. We want to get something through and decided by February 28th, one, for certainty for people that have already applied, whether they're going to be continued to apply or not. The lottery happens thereafter. So we're looking at it as I'm looking at it as a couple parts. And the second part is actually a much larger conversation of, once we move this to the state funds for accountability, transparency, all of that according, that's what the legislative auditor recommended, then we need to have a larger discussion. And that's part of what I think Representative Metza was kind of alluding to, is that's a conversation for us to have when we get that far. We're not quite that far yet, but we certainly need to have that conversation.
Well, then, Mr. Chair,
Representative Mahoney.
I think she tossed that into your lap.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, do you have a plan, or are you planning to have a series of committee hearings so that we, as a committee, can repurpose this multiple million-dollar fund, rather than one or two people coming up with a really, I'm sure it would be a fabulous idea. I just am sure I'd have to vote against it.
Tesla's for everyone, yeah. No, Representative Mahoney, I think for guidance, people should look at, in the omnibus bill in 2015, the concept of the energy fund took the renewable development fund, and then it commingled, it took additional general fund resources and put it into it. From that standpoint, that's how we had set it up originally. So you put those funds together so that instead of it being just an Excel service territory fund, it would be a statewide fund. I think that's something that the committee can have a conversation about. Second of all, with regards to what the energy fund would be used for, the reason why we're doing this is so everybody has a chance to compete for these dollars. And having one or two people decide that doesn't fulfill that goal. As a matter of historical record, back in 2011 or 2012, the legislature passed a law saying that the legislature could not appropriate funds from the Renewable Development Fund. That was the reform that was enacted. It was that the legislature could not touch it. And the next year, a different legislature came in and took about $175 million out of it. They changed the law, right? And so we tried it that way. We tried having the board do all the appropriations, keeping the legislature out of it. It didn't work, Representative Mahoney. So this is a new way. And the new way is, rather than having two separate tracks for people to compete for these resources, everyone's going to be in the same line, and they're going to have the same chance to propose their ideas to this committee or to the Senate committee through the legislative process. And the intent would be that whatever those ideas are, that people submit legislation, that they work with legislators, and there be almost a competitive grant type atmosphere with the members of this committee. Again, we have to see where things go, but that would be my intent. That's the reform. That's the reform aspect of doing it this way. But it'll be the will of this committee of how to address that. So, Representative Mahoney?
In other words, whoever has the most votes gets to put the money wherever they want.
That's usually the way it works, Representative Mahoney, yes.
Well, my question to you then, Mr. Chair, is, so the premise of the RDF was to reduce energy costs or energy needs in the XL Energy Service area. You go back to the tapes and you go back to the transcripts. That's where this deal got cut. And it has been moving out of the XL Energy every year a little bit more. It's legislative creep. And this bill adds to that? I mean, I agree that we need to get rid of the Made in Minnesota solar. It's a bad idea to begin with as far as I was concerned, and it's less bad now, but it's still a bad idea. But to continue to take $25 or $30 million a year out of XL Energy ratepayers and give them very little return on their dollar it goes against good governance principle. When you tax somebody, which is what this is, you have to give them services for it. And I've heard speeches on the floor that I almost took that verbatim from you.
I was going to say, it sounded very wise. Your comments were strangely wise. I was very confused by them.
So was I. But to do this, again, you're taxing somebody and not giving them anything back in return. You're spreading it out in areas that it was never intended to go to, and becomes a pet project for legislators. So it's unfair. And I hopefully, if it doesn't change, if there isn't a really good, strong way that this money stays in the XL Energy service area, a plan for that, I certainly will be voting against it in whatever other committees are for, or asking the governor to veto it. But at today's, I'm likely to vote for this. But I've had promises made up here before. I'm asking you to, not promise, but to lay out a plan that actually does not punish XL Energy ratepayers any more than they already are.
Representative Clark.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk about promises, too, and build on some of the discussion that's already happened. I passed out a letter that you all should have from the president of the Prairie Island Indian Community, Shelley Buck. And I just want to read a little bit of this into the record, at least some of the intent here, and talk about some of what we've already been talking about, just to remind us. One of the things that Ms. Buck points out, that it was in 1994 that we authorized a law that allowed casks to be at Prairie Island. And as Representative Waginia said, that was a very, very difficult, emotional, passionate discussion that created this law, that created the Renewable Development Fund. And it was a promise made, particularly to the Prairie Island Indian community, that in exchange for allowing this unbelievable situation of nuclear radioactive nuclear dry cast to be stored 600 yards from their community residences, that we would create this fund, and the purpose would be to decrease the state's dependence on nuclear energy. And President Buck talks about that in this couple paragraphs here. And one of the things that she also reminds us of, and I think this might have been stated before I came back in, that was created a little later, this 7-member advisory committee that included the stakeholders here. So it included the environmental organization, 2 representatives of environmental organizations, 1 Prairie Island Indian community representative. Very, very important that community be represented. 1 industrial commercial ratepayer representative, 1 residential ratepayer representative, and 2 Xcel Energy representatives. So that advisory committee, I would just say, as we go forward and we talk about what might be some criteria that you want to recommend, or that this committee can recommend as we go forward, I hope we'll look back at that advisory committee as a wise part of what has been in state legislation. As has been pointed out, the use of this new energy fund is the process and the oversight is silent. And I did have a chance to talk a little bit with Representative O'Neill, and I'm comforted by what you said your intention is, which is to still try to stay true to this original purpose of the process and the promise we made to the tribal community in the 1994 legislation. So I think, I don't know if you're going to bring that as a separate bill, Chairman, to talk about how to use this energy fund. You are intending to do that, okay?
Yeah, just as a matter of, regardless of my opinion, as a matter of, fact, well, if the governor were to sign this bill as we have it designed, this committee and this legislature would have to take action on it. Nothing happens automatically. There's no independent board that could just appropriate the funds. It would take legislative action. Representative Clark.
Yes, if the governor signs this bill, that's right.
Correct.
So, but I'm just really want to, I guess, emphasize again what others have been saying, which is it really is important that this committee put back in some of those very reasons why this Renewable Development Fund was established in the first place. I mean, it was a very, very difficult time, and I know many of you weren't here, but those of us who were, there were lots of tears and pain, and just a lot of heart and soul put into that promise to that American Indian community, and I just want to make sure that we continue with it. And I think, Representative O'Neill, you said you've met with them a few times, and that's really important for me to know that you care about that. So, Mr. Chairman and members, you can read the letter yourself. It's a very strong letter asking for that consideration of keeping the promise. And until we get that into this legislation, I feel like I don't want to support it until we get it there. So I'm really hoping that we can put it there, and be glad to work with you really hard on that. And Mr. Chairman, I hope we can stay true again to this very important commitment and to what we know works. And we had a lot of testimony today about what can work. Thank you.
Representative O'Neill, you're the author of the bill. You get the final word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Well, I appreciate all the testimony today and all the members' comments, and I do look forward to working with Representative Metza moving forward, and really the whole committee. We have to decide now, what does this become, if the governor is gracious enough to sign the bill and move this forward. So I look forward to a lot of conversations, and it's interesting that you brought up the commitment, and I've met with the Prairie Island folks for years, since I've been here, and actually before I was here, to be honest with you, because I used to work when I was in the Senate, I used to work for Senator John Howe, who actually was the senator at that time for that community. And so I've met with him long before I was even here. And where I grew up was northern Minnesota, and I always say I lived in the middle of 3 Indian reservations, and so they have a special place in my heart, the communities do. So I have that personal commitment. The other thing I'm really excited about is us working together as a committee to decide what is the energy fund going to be. And last week, I had a conversation with a constituent who said, I'm about ready to open up a new plant. So he's a recycler. And he's taking in plastic recycling and using a brand new process to gasify it and turn it into electricity. And he said it has 0 emissions when he's done. This is like a brand new technology, amazing technology. So he's taking plastics out of the waste stream, gasifying it, and burning it twice with water as the byproduct. And it actually produces 10 megawatts of electricity. That's the capacity, and which means as much as you put in is what you get out, because it's not the sun or it's not the wind. But what a great idea. You know, it takes things out of the waste stream and it actually converts it to energy that we can use. So I'm excited about this conversation moving forward and what the energy fund will be and what we could use it for. And I can't remember who said about, oh, maybe it was Metza, Representative Metza talked about the Tesla roof. I've been studying that too, and that's amazing. My daughter is a millennial, and she just thinks that's amazing. So she and I have these long conversations about renewable energy and alternative forms of energy. And so I think we just need to think outside of the box a little bit more, because of course the RDF was very confined. And I think we're ready for a new era, and I'd love to be a part of that conversation as we move forward. So that's that part, and I think we can do better with the Made in Minnesota Solar Initiative or, incentive program. I think we can do better. So I'm looking forward to see what that is.
The committee legislative assistant will call the roll.
Garofalo.
Yes.
Newberger.
Yes.
Mahoney. Clark.
No.
Wagenius.
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Barr. Baker.
Yes.
Dabney. Fabian.
Yes.
Howe.
Yes.
Lehman. McQuaid. Metza.
Yes.
Moran. O'Neill.
Yes.
Rarick.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Sundin.
Yes.
Thiessen. Vogel.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Back to Mahoney. Oh, back to
Oh,
Mahoney.
Mahoney.
Yes.
There being 14 ayes and 4 nays, House File 235 as amended is passed and referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Thank you, Representative Neal. The final bill is House File 113, Representative Newberger. Representative Newberger moves that House File 113 be recommended to pass and referred to the General Register. I'll wait for Representative Newberger to get to the testifying table. Representative Newberger, you have made your motion to refer to the General Register. Do you have any author's amendments you wish to move at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. There are 2 author amendments that I'd like to offer up for House File 113. One of them is a technical amendment that just clarifies a documentation number. That is the A1 amendment. And the other one adds a little more language to get this bill into the shape that I would like it to be in.
All right, so members, this is, well, first of all, Representative Newberger moves the A17-0010 amendment. Your research summary conforms to this amendment. This is to get the bill in the form the author would like. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Second Newberger amendment is the A1 amendment, and again, your research summary already contains this amendment. Bill in the form that the author would like. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. Representative Newberger, are those your only 2 amendments?
Correct.
All right, to your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. I'd also like to say a special thank you to everyone back in the district who's watching this on the House television channel. I really would like to say a special thank you to the hardworking men and women at the Sherco Power Plant, because Becker truly powers Minnesota. Just to start here, for those of you that are new, and I will be brief in the interest of time, Sherco, the Sherco Power Plant, provides 2,400 megawatts of reliable power 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year from 3 units. Sherco provides between 350 and 700 jobs, depending on the time of the year and the work cycle. These jobs make it possible for up to 4,000 other service and support-related jobs to exist in central Minnesota. Sherco is the largest property tax payer in Sherburne County. Sherco also is the largest property tax payer for the city of Becker. The local taxes, Sherco alone provides over $4.5 million a year. That equates to 76% of the city's property taxes. A new gas plant, recently there was a decision that was made to close 2 of the 3 operating units. Units 1 and 2 are scheduled to shut down process in 2023 and 2026. These 2 units combined pay 60% of the $4.5 million in local taxes. A new gas plant, which is what House File 113 proposes, would help to relieve the loss of jobs that we're going to lose, and it will also help in the relief of the loss of tax revenues, especially with related industries. Members, we are anticipating losing at least 150 full-time, feed-your-family jobs when these 2 units shut down. And these are jobs that are very hard to come by in this day and age. There's been a real need for what we call a strong back job. A strong back job is the kind of job where you can graduate from high school with a diploma and you can walk in and get employed and have a career for the rest of your life. If you graduate from high school, you can get hired at the Sherco power plant driving a shovel in the coal yard for about $25 an hour. If you have some initiative, if you have some incentive, if you want to make some more of yourself, there's many opportunities in the trade unions to advance to a very well-paid and highly rewarding career. Minnesota's running out of those kinds of jobs. So as you know, as stated, we're going to be losing 150 of these when we close down units 1 and 2. Last fall, the Public Utilities Commission approved the shutdown of these units. The PUC also agreed with Excel that there would be a need to replace approximately 750 megawatts of power generation. The PUC approved the expansion of new solar and wind generation, but they postponed a decision on the construction of a replacement gas generating unit that would generate 780 megawatts of power that would be located on this site where the current units 1 and 2 are. This site has been approved in the past. This site is a power generating site. That's what the status of that site is. This site also contains hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment in transmission infrastructure. This is the perfect place to put a gas plant. House File 113 also has the approval on a letter that's been circulated to you dated January 2, 2017 from the city of Becker. And I was also given word today that the Sherburne County Commission voted a resolution supporting House File 113. Simply put, I do not agree with the PUC's decision in this situation not to build a gas generating plant on the Sherco site. The economic impact to central Minnesota, in my opinion, was not taken into full consideration. Finally, it's the legislature's job to create policy, and it's the PUC's job to implement policy. Clearly, in my opinion, we have a blurring of the lines here. Minnesota needs a new power plant. We have 3 choices. And many of you know I'm an unashamed supporter of coal. But that's not possible in this current political environment. Building a nuclear plant is also not possible in this current regulatory environment. Our final option for 24/7, 365 reliable baseload power is gas. In a few short years, Minnesota will be facing a very real energy generation crisis. It's our job to address this issue today. House File 113 does just that. With that, Mr. Chair and members, I'd like to call forward some testifiers. My first testifier would be, I believe, Mr. Rick Evans on behalf of Excel Energy.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record, and please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Rick Evans with Excel Energy. I would second everything that Representative Newberger has said about this bill and maybe add a couple of things on behalf of the of the energy company, in addition to our strong desire to continue to support the communities of Becker who are losing, as Representative Newberger mentioned, some large assets, and replacing those with another asset not quite so large, but one that is necessary in order to serve our customers. And so we support this policy decision by the legislature to place that plant there. It's also important to us as a company for a number of reasons. First of all, we need some certainty at this point in time that the replacement of the 2 coal plants that the PUC has agreed to shut down is going to be in that location and at that size to support the wind generation that we're adding. As we all know, the wind doesn't blow all the time. If you like wind, you better like gas, because that's what's there when the wind is not blowing. And so we feel very strongly we need this plant there, and we need some certainty at this time because I think there was reference actually on the earlier bill about the fact that the Monticello nuclear plant comes to the end of its license in 2030. The Prairie Island 1 plant comes to the end of its license in 2033, and the Prairie Island 2 plant in 2034. Our next resource plan, which will be filed probably late in 2018 or early in 2019, is going to have to wrestle with those very difficult decisions, and it's going to be a lot easier to deal with those if we have some certainty on this stage of our process as we're moving from the 2 coal units to the additional renewable energy, excuse me, and the gas plant at Becker. It's also very important because, and I'm no engineer, as many of you know, but it's important for the stability of the grid that the generation go onto the system at that same location. We have the transmission facilities there, we have the land, we have the need for the energy, and we have the need to put something in that location to help us stabilize the grid. And so those are important issues to us as well, which is why I think the Public Utilities Commission, though they did not approve this plant for reasons that Representative Newberger has talked about, they did recognize the need for this energy that we're going to need to back up the solar that we're at, or excuse me, the renewable energy that we're adding. And finally, the last thing I'll say, and this goes to Representative Newberger's final comments, in the 15 years I've been doing this job, and for several years before that, the legislature has made important decisions about resources. We have biomass on our system because the legislature required it. We have wind, we have solar. We converted our 2 plants, our 2 downtown plants, the one at High Bridge and the one at Riverside, because of a legislative initiative. And in every one of those cases, what was done is the same thing that we're asking here in this bill, is that we bypass the certificate of need process and move forward with this generation resource as we've done many times before. And the last thing I'll say is, in the bill, we make reference to 216B.16. It's important to know that's the rate case statute. That is how the public, our customers, are protected in the state of Minnesota from XL Energy or any other utility going out and overspending or making unreasonable expenditures. We have this process that all the investor-owned utilities are under, the rate-regulated utilities. So for people, and I've heard some people around the building say, well, XL's trying to write itself a blank check. No, not one dime of this expense for this plant will be charged to XL Energy ratepayers until it has been presented to the Public Utilities Commission in a subsequent rate case, and they have determined that it is a fair, reasonable, and prudently incurred expense. So there's no blank check here. The risk is on us to build this plant the right way and the best way and the lowest cost way for our customers, and then go to the Public Utilities Commission, and if we can't prove that, our ratepayers aren't going to pay for it. So we have all of the incentive in the world to build this plant in the most responsible way possible, and then go to the Public Utilities Commission and try to demonstrate that to them in a rate case. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions when the time comes.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Representative Newberger, do you have another invited testifier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to call forward Mr. Andy Snope with the IBEW.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, committee members, for allowing me to testify in support of House File 113 today. My name is Andy Snope. I am the Legislative Director for the IBEW State Council. I'm speaking on behalf of 16,000 IBEW members in the electrical industry and in the state of Minnesota. And today I'm also speaking on behalf of 79,000 members of the Minnesota building trades. We are happy to support our partners, Xcel Energy, in their request to see this bill passed and help them get on track to build a gas-burning electrical production facility at the current Xcel Energy coal-burning facility in Becker, Minnesota. For many years, building trade members and IBEW members have worked with Xcel Energy to build, maintain, and operate the Xcel Energy Sherco plant in Becker. It's a good partnership which has provided for countless craft hours of work for our members while providing quality, skilled craftsmanship to our partner and customer, Xcel Energy. This summer, as was already testified, that the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission accepted Xcel Energy's latest resource plan. In that resource plan, as you know, they plan to shut down the coal burning generator 1 and 2 at Sherco. This plan has the potential loss of 150 to 200 IBEW members at the facility. While a gas facility will never provide as many jobs as a current coal burning facility, building this gas facility will help save some jobs for operators and engineers at the current facility. These jobs will help to continue to provide for good wages and benefits to our members and their families. Not only will this bill help save IBEW jobs in the operation of the new gas plant, but it will also create hundreds and maybe up to 1,000 building trades jobs to convert that current coal burning generator plant to a gas operated plant. Jobs are all crafts related to building and constructing a new facility. Electricians, pipe fitters, boiler makers, carpenters, laborers, equipment operators, sheet metal workers, painters, iron workers, plasters, there's probably many more. Please consider supporting House File 113 and supporting jobs for our members, especially those who will be losing their jobs through the conversion of this coal burning generation facility to clean burning natural gas. I'll be around to answer any questions. Chair Garofalo.
Thank you. Representative Newberger.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have additional testifiers. I'll call them forward at this time.
And Representative Newberger, are these your final testifiers?
I'm sorry?
Are these your final testifiers? or-
I believe so, yes.
Welcome to the committee, sir. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Matt Olson. I'm with Boilermakers Local 647. I'm here on behalf of Xcel, a good friend of ours, a good customer. In addition to the 150 to 200 jobs that Xcel will be losing, we're looking at 300 to 500 jobs for tradespeople working there every year. It's going to be a big hit to the community and local labor. That's, for these outages, you're looking at 500 between Boilermakers, electricians, millwrights, pipe fitters, sorry, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes, you are, I'm sorry. Xcel did a very excellent job with their resource plans and getting very diverse in their balance and where they're getting their power from. And to not approve this on a site that's already set up to get power where it needs to be would be kind of foolish. Everything's there, it's ready to go. It'll keep jobs in the community. Other than that, Mr. Snope and Mr. Evans pretty much did a pretty good job. It's not just the local economy, it's local jobs for all tradesmen. We're gonna lose 300, but at least we'll keep 30. Once that plant is built, that's only 30 jobs left in the Becker area for families. Those other 120 families are gonna have to go build solar panels somewhere, Alexandria, Faribault, wherever they're building, So I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Representative Newberger, do you have any other testifiers?
Not at this time.
All right. Other people have signed up in advance. The first one, J. Drake Hamilton from Fresh Energy, and Annie Levinson Falk is on deck. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jay Drake Hamilton. I'm the Science Policy Director at Fresh Energy. Fresh Energy is an independent nonprofit that provides in-depth research and analysis on energy issues in Minnesota. I'd like to begin by stating that the state has required additional analysis of alternatives to ensure replacements for the Sherco 1 plant are lowest cost. They've not made any decision one way or another. And I'd like to provide you with a little bit of information about how the means to determine the best resource fit to replace Sherco 1 are already underway. Minnesota, as you know, has a long and well-respected track record of resource planning, and the state put those mechanisms in place to ensure that our electricity system is reliable and affordable for customers. In the case of Sherco replacement, that process is underway by Xcel, state agency, and energy advocates to determine what resources and at what size are needed at the Sherco site, as well as on Xcel's system to support that reliable, affordable service to their customers. Just to give you a sense of the timeline, we've worked closely with Xcel and other parties through about the 2-year process that resulted in this excellent resource plan. It was first filed January 2nd, 2015. Xcel refiled essentially a different plan on October 2 of 2015, which we supported, and the commission made their decision over a couple of 9-hour days ending on October 13th of last year. And regulators at the PUC approved Xcel Energy's plan and invited Xcel to apply for a certificate of need to determine how to most cost-effectively replace the Sherco units. Instead, Xcel here is asking the legislature for unrestricted funds to short-circuit this review of cost and need. We think that the company's proposal under House File 113, which would build a natural gas plant in Becker, regardless of any determination of the need for it, and blind to the cost of that plant, would mean who would pay for this? We think it's about half the state, which are Xcel's ratepayers. So what happened in the resource plan is that on the question of replacements for Sherco 1, the Department of Commerce, clean energy organizations, including Fresh Energy, and the Xcel large industrials objected to a decision that would commit to specifics such as the exact fuel type and generation capacity at this site. We pointed out that the need for a decision on these details was not immediate because the plant does not need to be replaced for another 10 years by the end of 2026 and would be better left for future consideration using more information, which would allow more flexibility to consider alternatives in the meantime. The Public Utilities Commission was persuaded by the argument that it is premature at this time to determine with specificity the fuel type and location to address the capacity need. The Commission was not persuaded that alternatives to fix the reliability concerns raised by Xcel have been fully considered and believes there is adequate time to explore other resource options and consider the relevant socioeconomic factors without jeopardizing the feasibility of Xcel's preferred plan to build a unit at the Sherco site. The Commission decided to authorize the certificate of need process to evaluate options for addressing the anticipated need without prejudging or foreclosing Xcel's plan. Specifically, I want to read to you a little bit of the language from Order Point 9 from the Commission order. Although the Commission made their decision about 3 months ago on October 13th, their order just came out last week. But I understand that Xcel has already started working on toward the certificate of need. The order says Xcel is authorized to file a petition for a certificate of need to select the resource or resource combinations that best meet the system resource and reliability needs associated with the retirement of Sherco 1 in 2026, roughly 10 years from now. The company's filing and the proceeding shall evaluate combinations of supply side, demand side, and transmission alternatives. It must also consider location-specific factors, and they were talking specifically about Becker and Sherburne County and the needs there, related to those impacts on the local community and on regional reliability. Third, it must allow for utility ownership of replacement resources if determined to be in the best interest of customers. We understand that Xcel is very interested in that. And finally, it must ensure public participation. So in terms of consumer protection, Fresh Energy thinks that the kind of plant that Xcel is proposing would cost their customers more than $1 billion. When the state makes a decision of that magnitude, rather than lock in that high cost for customers across Minnesota, we should determine whether there are more cost-effective options using Minnesota's existing resource planning mechanisms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Levinson-Falk, and then Drew Maratska is on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Annie Levinson-Falk. I'm the Executive Director of the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota. As an advocate for Minnesota's residential utility customers, the Citizens Utility Board respectfully asks that you not move forward with this proposal today. We recognize how important it is for the city of Becker and its residents to have an answer before 2 of the 3 generators at Sherco retire in 2023 and 2026, and we understand that many are anxious to have this question resolved. However, this bill mandates the construction of a specific plant without going through the process to ensure that this is the lowest cost energy resource for Xcel's ratepayers, who will be on the hook for all of the costs. As multiple speakers from the cooperative utilities said earlier today, the Public Utilities Commission balances the interests of ratepayers and investors in investor-owned utilities. Before building a new power plant, an investor-owned utility must go through the Certificate of Need process at the PUC, which is a public and technical review to assess the lowest cost way to meet the utility's energy needs. It also takes into account socioeconomic factors like jobs. The Public Utilities Commission has agreed that Xcel will most likely need approximately 750 megawatts of generation in 2026 and has authorized a Certificate of Need process to determine the best option to meet that need. As the previous testifier noted, the PUC has stated that there's time to fully consider options for power generation at the Sherco site, their cost, and the relevant socioeconomic factors. It might be that a smaller generator than what's being proposed would be sufficient, or maybe it would be less expensive if a company other than Xcel did the construction. Certificate of Need is the forum to hash out these kinds of questions. Mandating the construction of this plant, or of any particular energy resource, through legislation might be good for the monopoly utility, but it sidesteps an enormous consumer protection. And it sets a dangerous precedent for power plants that will likely result in ratepayers being overcharged to the benefit of utilities and their shareholders. I respectfully urge you to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baraska, and then John Muntner. Muntner is next. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Andrew Maratska. I'm a partner at the law firm Stoll Reeves and focus my legal practice on an energy regulatory practice before the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. My work over the past decade, or dozen or so years, I guess now, has spanned many regulatory dockets, including utility rate cases, utility resource plans, and certificate of need proceedings. I am testifying today on behalf of the Minnesota Large Industrial Group, an ad hoc coalition of large industrial end users of gas and electricity. Our group consumes, when all the facilities are fully operational, about 6.5 billion kilowatt hours annually, and pays north of $350 million a year in electric energy costs alone. Our members contribute about $5 billion to the state economy and support directly and indirectly about 15,000 jobs. I want to use the opportunity to testify in opposition to what I view as a pro-monopoly, anti-competitive mandate in HF 113. In very simple terms, House File 113 allows a monopoly utility to bypass the commission-approved competitive process to the detriment of all utility ratepayers, large and small. Let me explain. First, on bypass. In its most recent resource plan, Xcel tried to receive a PUC approval for its proposal to retire Sherco Units 1 and 2. I want to make that clear. This was not a PUC proposal. This was Xcel's proposal. And then replace that with a 780 megawatt gas-fired facility. It did not receive that approval, as other testifiers have commented, and Xcel is now proposing to bypass that process that was established by the commission almost before the ink is dry on the commission's order. The bypass is to the detriment of all utility ratepayers, large and small. Certificate of need proceedings can generally be said to accomplish 3 objectives. First, establish a need. Second, get the costs of the project and the alternatives. And third, get an estimate for the project itself. Now, you may have heard, for example, about the Monticello facility and its life extension and extended power uprate a few years ago when Xcel Energy had to undergo a prudence review. Its initial estimate for the project was about $320 million. That was established in the certificate of need proceedings. Ultimately, a number of years later, the project came in at about $748 million, more than double the initial estimates. Ratepayer advocates, because of the values that were established in the certificate of need proceeding, were able to oppose recovery of that $748 million as imprudent. And after a prudence review, the commission agreed that there was, quote, substantial evidence of imprudent management, end quote, of the Monticello project. The commission ultimately allowed full recovery of costs for the project, but denied a rate of return on the cost overrun, which was how the commission dealt with the imprudent management. In other words, absent a certificate of need filing and the regulatory process surrounding it, ratepayer advocates would have had little ability to question Xcel's mismanagement of the Monticello project. Furthermore, the monopoly mandate in House File 113 forces the commission to allow cost recovery. So not only are ratepayer advocates hamstrung by an inability to participate in a certificate of need proceeding, ratepayer advocates will have little ability to argue about cost overruns, should they exist, cost overruns for which Xcel Energy is known to incur. In bypassing the commission-approved process to the detriment of all ratepayers, the pro-monopoly anti-competitive mandate creates troublesome precedent that monopolies are more important than competition, and the captive ratepayers of those monopolies should not have a say in the cost of their service. At least one member of this committee has publicly commented that the state government should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. If that is true, the state government should especially not be in the business of picking monopolies as winners and the general ratepayer public as losers. But that is precisely what the pro-monopoly anti-competitive mandate of House File 113 does. Therefore, I respectfully request that all members oppose the bill. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Muntner, you're next.
Can I have someone pass these out? A simple handout here?
Sure. Have the staff bring it up to me, and I'll take a look at it. Welcome to the committee, and please state your name again for the record.
John Munter, M-U-N-T-E-R, and I also oppose the bill. I sympathize with the people from Becker living up in the range in terms of the job situation. I wanted to add, though, too, I'm a retiree from Delta, as I mentioned earlier, and it's possible actually for people in Becker with our new economy to actually work in Chisholm. They could work at home on the computer. And many of my peers moved out in the community now from all over the range. They travel for hours from Chisholm to get there, and they only have to go up to Chisholm once a month, kind of like the way we go up to our cabin or down to the cities once a month or so. And I made $50,000 a year in the last few years, so the pay isn't too bad, and it's good benefits, good flight benefits, and you can move up the company, you can transfer to Florida if you want, and that type of thing. It's not for everybody, but it's an option in the new economy. I want to say that I think the bill is a terrible idea for Republicans. I think taking on the responsibility, taking away the responsibility away from the PUC and taking it on yourself for angry ratepayers. I think it's a bad idea for Republicans to do that, because I think there could be a problem with supply and demand for natural gas. We're looking at the wells in the Bakken declining now per well. The production is declining, and we could see in a few years where are we going to get our natural gas from? I mean, the Eagle Ford is collapsing, and of course there's natural gas in the Marcellus and West Texas and New Mexico, but it's a up and down game, and we have so much export now, not so much now export, but we have more export now for LNG outside the country, and we have people constantly citing these natural gas plants because they're, coal is being shut down or nuclear is being shut down. So what's the demand going to be? What's the supply going to be? And it's a terrible risk to take. In 5 or 10 years, we could have a very high price for natural gas, and the Republicans will be on the hook for it. And I think also you could have an era of ending of fracking. States could just decide they're not going to frack anymore, or the federal government in 10 years. And then, because we're looking at a facility that's going to be here for many decades, and we have to look long-term at this. So I think it's too early to look at that. The previous gentleman was talking about how the wind is blowing and we don't have, is not blowing, and sometimes, and that can be solved several ways. You can have wind energy north to south, for example. It takes advantage of different areas of wind blowing at different times. You can also have underground storage, as I mentioned. Germany and the UK are doing underground storage. The UK has a plant that concentrates the energy 700 times down into liquid and then pulls it up and runs it through a rotator. Of course, it's going to be more expensive, and you'd have to figure that out. There's also, I think, one in Alabama or so doing that as well. And I mentioned earlier the utility scale possibilities of liquid electrolyte they're working on in the University of Wisconsin, and there's some work on a different storage in Canada. So the longer we delay on making a decision on these gas plants, I think the more optimal will be, because as we're saying it, the wind and solar are dropping precipitously every year, and the longer we can wait, the better deal we'll probably get. I think also that it's a terrible carbon footprint as well. On this simple graph I showed, it comes from Robert Horwath from Cornell, who estimates that you can see coal footprint on the right and the shale gas on the left. He estimates that shale gas, oil and gas is 3 times worse carbon footprint than coal is. And he gets that from satellites that have gone over an estimated 9-10% leakage rate from the Bakken and from Eagle Ford. And of course, you'll get a much different answer if you ask, the EPA went around and asked, what industry leakage rates were, and of course, you get cherry-picked answers there, and that's why you get different answers. The EPA has also raised its leakage to 3%, I believe, now. And so if it's 3.2% or less, it's equivalent to coal in terms of a leakage. That's a carbon footprint. But with 9 or 10%, and you add a couple more percent on because it's leakage down the line, so that's where you get 12%. And then the second factor, too, on this is you have to calculate it on a 12-year basis. On that basis, then the leakage is 100 times worse than carbon dioxide is. Methane is 100 times worse over a 12-year period. The EPA, by law, has to assess it at a 100-year period, which is just crazy because it leaves the atmosphere in it. But 12 years, we know we're losing, half the Arctic is gone right now. We're having feedback effects. In a recent Science magazine article, they're finding that the effect we have of the methane that's leaked now goes into the ocean and comes up decades later, 75 years later, there's still 100 years later, there's still 75% of the thermal expansion in the ocean already, and it goes out to 500 years, there's still 40%. So, so the methane has to be calculated on a 12-year basis, really, because we're finding that. So I hope you'll, take this seriously, and I don't expect you to change your vote, but I think it's a bad idea for Republicans to be proposing this, so thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, esteemed members of the committee and Mr. Chairman. I'm a little nervous. I don't do this every day. I'm a ratepayer for Excel. I'm also retired. And like many of you, I'm a great Amazon shopper. I go online, I'm clicking, I'm looking for the best deals. And the fact that you are taking that opportunity away, essentially, for us ratepayers to be able to get the best deal we can possibly get.
Miss, could you please state your name for the record so that we...
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy Iverson.
Thank you. Please proceed.
It's rather surprising. We are all, as consumers, we are all about finding the best deal. So I'd ask you to really consider that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of the bill and move to member questions and comments. The chair has a question for Mr. Maratska, if he's still here. Mr. Maratska, you had mentioned you were testifying on which organization's behalf?
The Minnesota Large Industrial Group, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Maratska, are the taconite mills and the Iron Range, are they part of that group?
Mr. Chair, yes, they are. If you'd like, I can happy to recite the members of my group.
No, that's okay. And Mr. Maratska, when the solar mandate was passed, what were the costs to those taconite mills?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I understand the question.
When the solar mandate passed, there were costs associated with the solar mandate. What was the cost to those high energy intensive taconite distributors and manufacturers when it passed in 2013? How much did they have to pay in 2013?
Mr. Chair, there's an exemption for a certain subset of the members of my group, but not all.
Sure. So, Mr. Maratska, when there was a concern for cost coming forward on the solar mandate, it's fair to say that some large energy consumers, rather than be overall concerned about cost, cut a deal to exempt themselves from the cost, and instead left it with small businesses and families. Is that a fair statement?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if that's entirely fair, but if that's your characterization, you may have it.
Thank you, Mr. Maratska. I appreciate you answering those questions. There's no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Maratska. Representative Metza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Newberger, I sympathize with your situation with Sherco 1 and 2. And I kind of wish we were going through a process that I had to go through my first term. Actually, my first few weeks on the job, we started a transition, which I believe went through all the procedures in place at the time for the gasification transition for the Alaskan plant in Hoyt Lakes as they went from coal to natural gas. And fortunately, Minnesota Power was able to offer, I believe, almost everyone who is willing to move within a reasonable distance within their jurisdiction work. And I was just wondering, have there been conversations with internal moving of employees with Xcel Energy?
Representative Newberger, or Mr. Evans, if you wish to.
Thank you, Representative Metz. I can handle this one. This is an issue that I've been tracking for about 6 years. And at this point in the game, and I just met with our local 160 on Thursday, not one single person who is employed at this time is going to get a pink slip. They are going to repurpose those positions. People that are employed will be employed in other areas of Xcel, and then the other individuals that choose not to do that will be offered early retirement. I would not be up here promoting this bill if that was not the case. If they were handing out 150 pink slips, the demeanor of this hearing would be much different, and you would see an entirely different side of this representative. But that does not negate the fact that we are going to lose 150 jobs. As these jobs are eliminated, there will not be people to backfill them. Hence, we will have an enormous economic impact. So in short answer to your question, the people that are currently working are going to be taken care of. We just will not be backfilling those positions when those 2 units are eliminated. And that is the economic argument that we're putting forward here, which in some way, shape, or form, putting a gas plant in will help to relieve some of that strain to our local economy, to central Minnesota. Folks, members of the committee, this is not just a Becker issue. If you think this is just a Becker issue, then you need to rethink this. This is a central Minnesota issue. You put your finger on the Sherco power plant, draw a 45-mile circle around it, that's how far out that's going to extend. We have people that travel from all over the 7-county area that work in those facilities. This is not just, this is central Minnesota. This is not just Becker. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Representative Metza.
Representative Metza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. Go ahead. Representative Metza.
Yeah, I just got a couple more questions so I don't know if there's so much questions, a couple statements as well. You know, in reflecting on the last few months here, I've had the great opportunity over the summer to get together and learn a lot about some of the new coal and gasification processes, being educated from my friends at the Boilermakers on some of the exciting technology coming out up in Canada in regard to that, and, you know, hope we can have discussions around that. And just want to make it real clear to voters out in Minnesota. A lot of the rhetoric going back and forth, we hear Republicans and Democrats, and I just want to make it very clear as a Democrat that when we're here making laws, it affects people in the short term, the long term. We want good policy. We want good things in place to protect jobs. We want good things in place to protect ratepayers. And we've reached a point, at least for me, in my short career here at the legislature, where I'm tired of the political jargon. So I'm going to cut to the chase. It's time we start working together for the embetterment of people. And I am directing that at both sides, because it's easy to sit and point a finger and let someone fail as they're moving forward. There's a few things in here that I'd like to work with you on as we're moving forward, but I think the overall intent of your bill is good, it's genuine, it's what I'd be doing for my district if I were in your shoes. And I think we have to, you know, really be careful in terms of the way we're talking about this kind of stuff, because it's not as partisan as folks think. There's things we can do together and find common ground. And I think that was a general message that voters sent us in November to both parties, was go do your work. Don't come back with, you know, bills that aren't passed at the end of session and finger pointing. And it's really easy to jump in, and, you know, I know Hillary Clinton talked about lost coal jobs, and I think that was drastically overreacted in the way that she spoke about that. Press, you know, jumped onto it, that evil media, right? And we really got to get beyond that and actually start talking about the people we're affecting. And we're all here to pass good policy and make a difference in people's lives. And I'm looking forward to hopefully having, in a couple of years now, we haven't had a energy policy bill that's gotten off the floor and out and passed. We had some hiccups at the end. We haven't had a bonding bill, a transportation bill. What I do know, and what I've heard loud and clear from our building trades members, especially around the state, is people need to be working too. And on the flip side, though, it's not a fight between jobs, the environment. We can have both good jobs and a good environment. You know, PolyMet, a project in my district, has been the hotbed of years of debate. If I didn't have to talk about PolyMet in this building, moving forward, I'd be one happy camper, because I believe that on my side of the aisle, we have been the party of science moving forward, and that we can offer good solutions that enable us to have a great conversation, Matt, in regard to what we talked about with your stuff this summer, and that we need to move the ball forward in terms of what we're doing here in these jobs, voting in committee on tough issues like this. And I understand you're sidestepping the process a little bit. I learned a little bit about today, and I do have a little hesitation with some of it. But I also know you, Representative Newberger, and I know that you're a good listener for the most part. Also quick to fly off the handle like me sometimes, overreact a little bit, but I think that's shared with both of our chairs here too, from both sides from time to time.
Not so long as he has his Twitter account.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I can't even use Twitter
All right,
anymore.
so Representative Wetzel, you're wrapping up?
I'm wrapping up. No, but I think this is an important discussion for us to have in this body, because we go back and forth on all this stuff, and we just point fingers and say the Republicans, it's going to be their fault in 10 years. The Democrats, it's going to be their fault. It's all of our fault if we fail to get the job done. And so moving forward, working in good faith, I hope you'll take some of the concerns brought up today. I think there were some valid ones, and be able to address, I think the most moving one for me wasn't as Representative Ansels would say, the professional meeting attenders here, was you, ma'am, at the end. And I want you to know, we're looking out for the ratepayers too, and I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm going to ride Representative Newberger all the way to the end of session and make sure that we can do that. But I'm going to support his idea moving forward too, because it's tough when your community's in these positions. And I know that, you know, natural gas, is it the perfect solution? No, if we could have a thorium reactor and go be recycling nuclear, what used to be nuclear waste at the recycling plant, that to me would be great. But we have nuclear moratorium in the state. So we've got real tough issues to tackle. And my district, it could be a good amendment for this bill. Maybe I'll offer that on the floor. But we've got tough issues to tackle. And Mr. Chair, that I probably wouldn't have gone on so long, but you had to bring up the carve-out.
Oh, yeah. It's my fault again, I'm sorry. So, you done, Representative Metza?
Very close,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
And wrapping up.
And, yeah.
And I kind of sarcastically say, I'll be brief, which means I'm going to go on another 15 minutes in politics world. I'm kidding about that. But we've got to have solutions out here that work for both, and we got to get beyond the idea that it's one side's going to completely obliterate the other, because what I see out there are people are afraid of what's going to happen on a national level. I've got friends and family on both sides of the issue that are passionate about it. And what I want you to know is, regardless of our differences in this committee, we can put our issues aside and we can work together and get our job done. And we're not going to win every fight. They aren't going to win every fight. But hopefully we move the ball forward so that my baby, hopefully that comes out healthy in February, my first child, I want them to be born into a world where they have all the options on the table for them, and that we haven't written off everything as good or bad or, you know, indifferent. With that being said, today's tough committee day. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of people are passionate about. And the toilet bowl's spinning, but it's not flushed. And the best part about wastewater sometimes, not that the bills are waste by any means, is that we have the ability to treat the stuff when it comes out the other side, and we all get a chance to go drink that water again. So we're going to be back here year after year going through this. And I hope some of this, so we put to bed these big fights that are going back and forth, and we get the job done for the people we're here to represent, because people are tired of us not doing stuff together. And I hope, Mr. Chair, that in this committee, moving forward, we take both sides of the opinions very seriously, and we do the best work we can for all Minnesotans.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I take one moment to poke out my mind's eye over that last analogy?
So we have, the next members up are Wagenius, Scott, Make-Wade, and Clark. Representative Wagenius.
Thank you. Could Mr. Evans come up?
I don't know, can you, Mr. Evans? Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Newberger, all of my constituents are Excel customers, and because they're Excel customers, I'm obviously concerned about their rates. And I know a lot of people sitting around this table are in the same position that I am in. And I have read the report from the PUC, or their order that just came out, and I actually expect that there will be a gas plant in Becker. I think the question is not whether there's going to be a gas plant in Becker, but the size of the gas plant in Becker, and who should make the decision about the gas plant in Becker, and is it too early? And I'm going to just quote a couple things from the PUC order, because one of the things they said is they doubted the usefulness of Excel's forecast beyond the 5-year action plan, and that was on page 6 of the order. And then they said it was too early to make a final decisions about additional resources. That was page 8. So it's too early to do this. And they specifically said they were making this order because it was in, quote, ratepayers' interest, unquote. Finally, I want to point out a statement on page 9, and this was a quote. At the commission's meeting, Excel agreed that a certificate of need filing would incorporate an updated energy and demand forecast for commission evaluation, unquote. So Excel actually agreed to the process, and here we are. So here are my questions for Excel. Folks have been kicking around what the cost of this plant is going to be. I hear 800 million. Is that ballpark?
I believe that's in the ballpark, yes.
Okay. Does that include the cost of the pipeline to bring in the gas for this facility?
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, no, it does not.
Representative Guinness.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can you give us a ballpark or a range of what that cost might be?
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, no, there are 3 potential sources of bringing natural gas to the area. We would explore those and find the best resource to bring to the area.
Representative
like,
Guinness.
if you could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're thinking 3 different routes, is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, there are 3 different points, actually one north, one east, and one south of the potential of the gas site where we would be able to get the gas.
Okay.
Representative Guinness.
Okay. So I read the proposed new law, and it says, notwithstanding any other law or rule to the contrary, Excel at its sole discretion may construct, own, and operate. Now, what I hear in that is that Representative Newberger is also exempting you from the PUC pipeline siting and routing requirement, like the environmental review and public participation. Am I reading that correctly?
Mr. Evans.
Representative Guinness, Mr. Chair and Representative Guinness, I don't think so. Frankly, the exclusion is, has to do with the process of approving the construction, ownership, and operating of the plant, which is a separate question from the fuel. We face this question all the time. We have 3 biomass plants that have to have fuel delivered to it. We have the gas plant at High Bridge that had to have fuel delivered to it. We have the gas plant at Riverside that had to have fuel delivered to it. We have the gas plant at Black Dog that had to have fuel delivered to it. By the way, none of those projects required certificate of need. They were exempted by the legislature. The projects themselves were required by the legislature, much like what this bill does in this plant, but they were exempted from the certificate of need. And so, getting the fuel to the gas plant will be an expense, but that's a separate question than the question of the certificate of need for the plant.
Representative Guinness.
If I
Follow
could
up.
follow up, Mr. Chair, the word to me looks pretty crystal clear that you will not have to go through the siting process, the routing process that is under the PUC. And that's the question I'm trying to get at.
Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, Representative Agenius, no, this bill does not impact souting and routing, yes, that's what I meant to say, the siting or routing of the gas pipeline. The gas pipeline may be, depending, and it's going to depend on who builds it and how it's built, it may come in under federal regulation and not actually require a state regulation, or it may come in under state regulation. That's a decision that's yet to be made and yet to be determined when we get to that point.
Representative Wagenius?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm looking at is, from my ratepayers' point of view, is the maximum size plant with the maximum size pipeline. And we're adding that up, and we're thinking close to $1 billion, I think. And then we're looking at the amount of gas that has to be purchased every year, and I suspect this is a 30 or 40-year plant. Am I right about that,
Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, I'm not positive of that, but I think that's probably a good working hypothesis.
And one follow-up. You're still doing fine compared to Representative Metza. You're fine. So I just want to make sure. Go ahead. Representative, yes, that's true. That's a good point.
So one of the things that I've been researching, and people have helped me out with it, is that the expectation is that gas will increase at a rate of 2.1% a year over the years. And of course, that's compounding. Is that pretty much in line with what you're thinking?
Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, I don't know. I don't know what that projection might be.
Okay.
Representative Wagenius?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking at these major, not small, major costs, and the question is this going to be this big a cost or this big a cost? And it is normally the PUC who would decide that. Is it this or is it this? So I am finding it just super ironic that Republicans are bringing this up for a vote. And let me tell you why. I want to make a comparison. Republicans are adamantly opposed to a gas tax increase. And that increase would be for roads and bridges, something we all use in common. But here we have the equivalent of a gas tax increase. I mean, I'm thinking about Chair David's right now. Tax is a fee and a fee is a tax. So you are proposing the biggest base possible. So we'll have the biggest tax possible. And you say one of these things is terrible. One of these gas taxes is terrible. That's the one for roads and bridges. And it's the worst thing that could happen. But here we have another tax. And it's going to be on our electricity, particularly if this plant is too large. And I'm really looking at that too large issue. And that tax seems to be a good idea. And for that reason, Mr. Chair, I do hope we can go through a roll call on this one.
Roll call has been requested. So noted. Thank you. Representative Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Newberger, I know you talked about the property tax base that is provided now by the plant there. How much is that going to go down by, or what's going to be the end result if this gas plant goes in there?
Representative Newberger?
Thank you for your question, Representative Scott. At this time, we are estimating, it all depends on the tax structure. The current tax structure, simply put, taxes on the value of the property. We are looking at, and we'll probably hear before this committee, changing the tax structure from property ownership to energy production. We're working with all the interested parties. But at this time, if we go by a property value, the gas plant will not bring in as much as the current 2 coal units do. The best estimate that I got was about 65% of that. That's a loose number. However, if the tax valuation formula changes from property value to production value, that could change as well depending on what the formula is. So short answer is it will not bring in as much as we currently make, but something is better than nothing.
Thank you.
Representative Make-Wade and Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Newberger, well, real quickly, I want to take a lead from my colleague, Representative Metza here. I called him for the first time after I got elected, and we were on the phone for an hour and a half, and I did not say a lot. So one of the things that I found myself doing in this committee is I'm very, very taken by the testimony, but also the intent behind these bills. And the bills that we've heard today, I think the intent is good, and I spoke to you about your bill privately, and I think this is great for your community, and I love that you're standing up for your community this way. So as any good freshman legislator and well-educated ISD 196 student, I was looking at all of this stuff last night, and this is very short. And so I was like, PUC Commission 1521, I don't know what that is, and so I went and looked at it, and at a certain point, I just kind of threw up my hands. I was like, this isn't my job. Right? This is the Public Utilities Commission's job, is to say what this plant should do and how and when, and to the ratepayers, of which I'm one. And I think that's what's concerning to me, not what you're doing for your community or for the jobs. I think it's very necessary that this stays in your community and that we have these jobs there and the tax structure. My concern is that I can't understand anything that is in this PUC report. I can't understand anything that was submitted by Excel, because that's not my job. That is the job of the commission as it's been outlined. And so my concern is that we're being asked to vote on something that we do not have the expertise in at all, and that we have these unintended consequences that in a year or 2 years, we're hearing more ratepayers saying, we have this huge plant, or 10 years from now, that's 786 megawatts of natural gas, but guess what? Wind and solar are a big deal. And so that's my biggest concern, is that we are being asked to serve a function that we don't serve, and we're circumventing the experts. When it seems from their report that they're not against this plant by any means. The summary indicated that they were for the first 2 or 3 things, right? And then wanted variability after that 5 years. And so I'm not sure, I get the economic concern, right, that the plant won't be there, but I'm not sure why the hurry to circumvent the experts and really the body that protects the consumers, including me, for something that they haven't really indicated that they're not going to do.
Representative Newberger.
Thank you for your input, Representative May-Quade. Was there a question in there, or was that just a statement?
That was kind of my question. Why are we circumventing that process for something that it doesn't seem they haven't indicated they won't do it? It's 10 years out, and they've agreed to so much of it. And like, there was only this bill in here. So we didn't have, it says the proposal as proposed to the public. We didn't get the proposal. We didn't get the environmental impact. I mean, we're being asked to vote on something that we didn't get any more information except these, 7 lines.
Representative Newberger.
Well, Representative May-Quade, thank you for your input. And if you're asking why we're circumventing the experts, I would challenge you to look at the backgrounds of many of the commissioners, where they came from. Many of them came from here. Their job is like ours. To understand these issues. As a freshman, being 3 weeks into the legislature, I understand exactly where you're coming from. You're trying to drink water from a fire hose. I get that. But you're going to find that this is not a unique situation, that you are going to be facing this situation, not only in this issue, but hundreds to come. And that's why we have these hearings. That's why we have the research staff that is so excellent at making us look better than we really are, and having witnesses come down. We dig into these issues. As you progress and as you spend time in this committee or in other committees, you will become much more educated on these issues. At this current point in time, like I said, being 3 weeks into this committee, I can totally understand where you're coming from. But these are issues that many of these members have followed, tracked, and deeply researched for years. And it is with utmost confidence that I present this bill.
Representative Make-Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So has this committee or the legislative body ever approved one specific plant for one specific community before by a public utility?
Mr. Evans, would you like to answer that question?
I got that. Mr. Chair, I've got that here. We got the information right here. The High Bridge plant was repowered with gas. The Riverside coal plant was transferred to gas, and the Black Dog coal plant was repowered with natural gas. All of those did not require a certificate of need from the Public Utilities Commission. So this is not a unique situation. Technically speaking, this could be considered round 4.
So,
Representative Makeway.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is, but those had the exemption from the certificate of need, and this one is not exempted from that, correct?
That,
Representative Makeway, do you want to restate your question?
yeah.
So this bill would exempt from the certificate of need, correct? And all the other ones had that same thing, they were exempted from the certificate of need?
Representative Newberger.
Correct.
Thank you.
Representatives Clark, Mahoney, and Anderson. Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, I just wanted to say one thing to Representative McQuaid, which is, I think, and I was just trying to, I guess I need to ask, I don't know who to ask, who will know here, but it seems to me there was a PUC approval in those cases. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it didn't go through the whole exemption process here. I think that's what is being testified to, but there was still some sort of approval. I think what we do know is that this would probably be approved too. I just wanted to say one thing. When you were talking about the jobs, I mean, that's a very important issue to me. And I tell you, those 150 jobs that would not be replaced, I was having these feelings when we were talking about the 11,000 jobs, when we were talking about the solar plant workers and the people who were going to do that earlier too. You know, and I guess I think we do need to do everything we can to preserve jobs. You probably don't know this, but I was the author of the bill that created the Dislocated Workers Fund, which eventually became our workforce development fund that we have in this committee. So I care about that. I've got a strong record of caring about that. But I just feel like it's a disconnect, you know, the jobs that we're talking about here and what we talked about earlier. And I just don't know how this committee can have that disconnect and kind of have our integrity at the same time. So I wanted to raise that. The other thing, Representative Bogini did ask a question about the pipeline. And I did want to ask, you said there's 3 possible sources. Can you tell me what those sources are?
Representative Newberger or Mr. Evans.
I think Mr. Evans probably was the
Mr.
one who
Evans.
said that.
Representative Clark, I don't, but I will get those to you. I'll send them to your office tomorrow. I don't know off the top of my head what those locations are, but I'll provide that to you.
Because,
Representative
again,
Clark.
Mr. Chairman, one of the issues, you know, we've lived through a number of pipeline concerns and issues, and I guess I would be concerned to have some clarity in this bill as it goes forward, whether or not there will be, you know, siting issues for the farmers and the other landowners whose property would be impacted by this pipeline. And so it seems to me that's missing, and there's no rush. There's a 10-year time that we could do this, but since it seems to be being rushed, at least something like that should be addressed in this bill, it seems to me. And I would just ask you to consider that.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to
Mr.
something.
Evans.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, you know, it's hard for a utility company like ours to start making the investment of these kinds of investigations if we don't know that the plant is approved. So you would essentially be asking us to go out and explore the construction of a gas pipeline and the siting and routing and the design and all of that without knowing that we have a power plant to take it to. So there's an order to these things. The certificate of need, which we're bypassing here, will not address the pipeline. It will address the need to put this gas plant there. And so, you know, we're not wiping out the entire regulatory scheme with respect to how this gas plant is located and how it's supplied with fuel. We're talking about a very narrow thing, which is the certificate of need, and which has been bypassed, you know, quite a few times before. For example, all of the energy that we purchase under the Renewable Energy Standard, which is required by the state legislature, is specifically exempt from a certificate of need. It's 30% of our energy by 2020 has to come from renewable energy, and there's no certificate of need required by state law. I have to mention community solar gardens. We have 1,000 megawatts or more of community solar gardens waiting in the queue to be hooked up to our system because in 2013 the legislature required us to do that. And you know what? No certificate of need. Not only that, if we don't need the energy, tough, we have to take it anyway. And it is very expensive energy. And I just have to point out, Fresh Energy is one of the biggest supporters of community solar gardens in the state. Energy that is not needed, energy that is very expensive, but energy that we have to take because the legislature told us to. Stoll Reeves Law Firm represents community solar garden developers who want to build solar energy at a very high price that we are required to take whether we need it or not. This is not unusual. This is actually very common, that we would be in here pursuing public policy at the state legislature to promote certain kinds of generation that will be developed without the Public Utilities Commission ever looking at a certificate of need. And the protection of the ratepayers will be when we bring this in a rate case where the Public Utilities Commission will have the option to say yay or nay on every dime that is spent on this plant.
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Clark.
Well, I don't know that we're asking you to go do the work on the pipeline. That's certainly something that the Public Utilities Commission would have a very important role in, and we could trust those figures. So you wouldn't be alone in figuring that out. I don't understand why you're saying that. Maybe you have a role in it, but it's certainly not your job just to figure out whether or not something is needed when we have a PUC whose job it is to do that. So I guess the other thing is, we're talking about, if you want to compare solar to natural gas and the kind of environmental issues that are raised there, they're not the same. They're very different. You're dealing with methane, you're dealing with the whole pipeline issue, you're dealing with a lot of issues that do not come up when you're talking necessarily about solar. So they're not equated, and if we want to get into an environmental discussion, as Representative Metsa said we didn't need to do that, we could. But that's not the purpose of your bill today. And so I just want to say, that, Mr. Evans, that, we know that the role of the PUC is to figure out some of these things, not just the producer of the Energy Excel.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just a little bit frustrated here. And Representative Metsa, thank you for saying what you said earlier about finding the best solutions for people. Because is this pipeline now, if we get this plant converted, because many people in this room didn't want the coal plants going anymore, so we're finding a logical, cleaner solution for energy here. And so is the next thing going to be, the next obstacle going to be the pipeline to get the gas there and kill it like you did Enbridge and all those jobs that went with that? Is that going to be the next thing that we're going to be arguing about here? I'm so frustrated. The legislature puts these mandates on these companies for cleaner energy. They, like Mr. Evans said, they have no choice. And you're concerned about ratepayers. What about the expensive rates that ratepayers are paying because of expensive solar going in? I'm fed up, Mr. Chair, but let's keep going, I guess. We've got a few more testifiers.
Yeah, Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to comment that that was the most wild I'd ever seen Mr. Evans in 15 years.
13 years, that's the most I've seen, too.
Yeah.
So. And you were the one closest to him. Yeah, so Representative
Yeah,
Mahoney.
he's so nice guy. And this is a question, I have a series of questions for Mr. Evans. You were asked about the pipeline earlier and the locations, and you indicated that you didn't know, so you might not know this one. We have natural gas pipelines, we have oil pipelines, we have all sorts of pipelines. I think it's thousands of miles of pipelines in the state of Minnesota. And I'm just wondering, do you know what the length from the main natural gas line to wherever this plant will be sited up in Becker would be? Is it 10 miles? Is it 110 miles?
Mr. Chair, Representative Mahoney, I don't, but I'll get that to you and to the committee administrator tomorrow so that that can be shared with the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Representative Mahoney. Representative Mahoney, just want to make sure that the committee legislative assistant has it. You were asking for the distance from the main pipeline to a potential site in Becker. Was that the question?
Correct. I
Okay.
can't imagine, knowing where some of the lines are up there, I'm pretty sure it's going to be less than 20, 30 miles, but I wanted to get an answer from.
Not that we want to drill down into a pipeline conversation, but the question would be, we might have to upsize an existing pipeline. So I don't want to get into that conversation, but just something you should know about. Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Evans, now I've been involved in some of these power plants once or twice in my life. Can you give the committee what kind of the timeline of engineering, finance, construction, testing, and bringing it online? How long does that take? Is that a 1-year process, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year process?
Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair, Representative Mahoney, our intention would be to bring this pipeline, or rather, excuse me, this gas plant online. So you've got me flustered now, so by somewhere around 2025. So between the time that we shut down Sherco 2, which would actually be the earlier plant we would shut down, and then shut down Sherco 1, which would be in 2026. You know, I don't know, I should have that information because we did the same thing at Riverside and we did the same thing at High Bridge, and but it's not at my fingertips, but I will get that information to you.
Representative Mahoney?
But I suspect it's a great deal over a year between the time that you actually start on this process and finish it.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And Mr. Chair, I know I worked on just a part of the High Bridge plant for about 9 months, and I was only there for part. So I know it's more like a couple of years' worth of construction, and then you've got to do the engineering and the finance and the testing. So it goes on a little longer. I don't really have a question. I'm going to give a little speech here, which is frustrating to me. The piece that's frustrating, the piece that people come and talk to me, because I end up in the construction industry and in the world of people reading the newspaper and my constituents, and they always go, why does it take so long? What is the problem? And I go back through some of the PUC stuff, and then I see that there's a lawsuit here and a lawsuit there, and then it has to go back for another EPA environmental impact statement. And part of this is that it does take 5 years or 10 years to get either a power plant sited or to site a pipeline, and then once that's all sited and the material's bought, then all of a sudden something else comes up. And that's the frustrating piece. And this is kind of like a sledgehammer to the PUC and a variety of other groups, that you keep putting roadblocks in the way of our infrastructure, the infrastructure that we need as a society to move forward, whether it's to heat our homes or light our rooms or, you know, run the air conditioning in this building. We can't continue to delay infrastructure projects because we can, and hope that they just go away. You know, Representative Scott mentioned Enbridge, and that was just a fight till they would go away, till they would not want to do it. Became too much of an expense, too much of a time-consuming piece that they just said, the heck with it, we'll do something else. We'll send it a different route. And this is a sledgehammer. I wish we were using something else to send that message. Because at some level, I think that this system could all have been worked out rather better. There seems to be a lack of trust that this will actually happen. And that's the problem, and that's why one of these type bills comes forward. When there's no trust in government, working people get frustrated, and when working people get frustrated, we get surprised. I'm going to be voting for this because I'm a little tired of telling working people that they're the last people on the list. I'm more concerned about fixing our infrastructure, providing the services that we as government say we're going to provide, and do it in a timely manner. I could say something else about some of the legal processes, but then I just have a whole lot of lawyers at my door, and I don't really need that. So, Mr. Chair, I hope we can, I'm interested in moving this bill forward, and hopefully it will help our infrastructure needs of the future.
Representative Anderson?
Just very quickly, Mr. Chair, and it must be getting late, I'm agreeing with Representative Mahoney. And,
I'm leaving.
But just to clarify, it was mentioned a couple of times in testimony that let's not move on this, we've got 10 years. Well, that's not the case. We have to plan, move ahead, and to do this in a prudent manner. The project makes a lot of sense, and sometimes we don't do things that make sense, but this seems to be one thing that does. So I would support this and to vote to approve it and move ahead with the project.
Representative Wagenius.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Representative Mahoney got at my question about pipelines, but let me just clarify. You had testified that there were 3 potential places, and so you know kind of where the end is, and that's one thing we want to know. And then, is that enough coming from one? So if you could tell us both those things, I think Representative Mahoney got it, the first part, but is that pipeline big enough, or might you need to?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Representative Wagenius, I'll get that information.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments from members, the chair's comment would be that Representative Mahoney said my point better than I could. I would just add that when Public Utilities Commissioners offer their opinions from the bench and they say some of the things they've said, particularly about this project, it should come as no surprise that local communities and investor-owned utilities freak out and come to the legislature for remedies. No one should be surprised by that when you see what's been going on. And it's not just Xcel, it's not just Becker, it's not just Minnesota Power with the EITE problem, nor the problems with Otter Tail Power, nor the natural gas companies, nor the telecom industries, nor the pipeline companies. They're all coming to our offices telling us they don't know what this Public Utilities Commission is doing. And it's creating regulatory uncertainty. And for all the talk about taxes and spending, it doesn't matter what your tax structure is. If you don't know what the regulatory climate is in the place you want to invest, no one's going to build any jobs in your state. None. And we got to get this stuff fixed. Representative Newberger, you're the author. You get the last call, the last word on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. I know it's late. I did want to address the concern that was brought up about the ratepayers. I am a ratepayer, and I know that Xcel's makes a lot more money when my daughters are home for the summer. Everyone in my district, I represent thousands of Xcel ratepayers. So to have the ratepayers' interest in mind, we certainly do. And this bill, with the way it's been amended, will address those concerns. I believe that passing this bill is a good step forward. We've talked a lot tonight about jobs and economic security and moving forward, and I do, members, believe that this bill does that. And with that, I would humbly ask you for a yes vote.
Representative Newberger renews his motion to have House File 113 as amended be recommended to pass and referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please signify. Or wait, there's a roll call. I'm sorry. There's a roll call. Sorry. Clerk, the committee legislative assistant will call the roll.
Garofalo,
Yes.
Newberger,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye.
Clark,
No.
Wagenius,
No.
Anderson,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Baker,
Aye.
Davnie, Fabian,
Yes.
Howe,
Aye.
Lehman, Mayquaid, Metza,
Aye.
Moran, O'Neill, Rarick,
Yes.
Scott, Sundin,
Yes.
Thiessen, Vogel,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Texas been liberals, you.
There being 16 ayes and 3 nays, House File 113 as amended passes. Members, that completes our agenda for the committee. Thanks for everyone's patience, and with that, we are adjourned.